Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where today we're going to be talking through Game Week 37, the last double game week of the season. We're looking forward to it, but we're not looking forward to the end of the FPL season. Let's get straight into some transfer targets.
Okay, then, so to kick us off, we're going to start through a couple of goalkeepers because see, this week is a little bit different to most. A lot of managers will be playing their bench boost this week. I know myself and Ben both are. If you're not, you're probably not looking at to make a goalkeeper transfer, but I think these two guys are quite important to look at if you are. So Onana at first. Obviously, United defensively are awful at the moment. Let's not be beating around the bush. As you can see, a 4 to Palace on Monday night. I think the key thing with him is that he's going to get loads of saves. They're conceding so many shots. So it just depends on whether you think the saves are going to outweigh the goals conceded. Obviously, two home fixtures for United as well against Arsenal and Newcastle. They're not the easiest fixtures for their defence. And there is no sign of any defenders being back at the moment. What's your thoughts on Onana, Ben?
Yeah, I think owners are caught in a bit of a tricky position because obviously, like myself, I've brought him in on the wild card. So it's a difficult one. I think for double game week keepers, he's up there with one of the better options available. But by no means is he sort of like the best one available. One of those where United are conceding, but like you said, there is the potential of getting the save points in because of the sheer volume of shots conceded. I would probably be happy with potentially a 3 or 4 pointer in each, and I think you come out pretty well there for both games. So if you get a clean sheet in either of those, then it's a bonus, and you're on for a really good haul there.
Yeah, you definitely clean sheets have been so hard to come by all season. So if you do get a clean sheet from any of these goalkeepers, because particularly a lot of these teams are poor defenses, barring Man City. So yeah, I think you'll be lucky to come out with any. Obviously, another keeper we've mentioned in previous weeks is Vicario. Similar sort of scenario. I think you're trying to get him for that Burnley at home fixture, hoping that they keep a clean sheet. Saying that though, Burnley have a lot to play for. They're still not relegated as of yet. So they'll be up for it and be trying to steal some points off of Tottenham. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he a better option than Onana?
Yeah, I think he is slightly better than Anana in terms of the points potential. Obviously, Burnley at home, City's going to be a tough one, but let's not forget as well in game week 38 they got Sheffield United away, who are already relegated, so may just be sort of a bit of a nothing game for them. The only point that I would make regarding Vicario is if you already have someone like Pedro Porro, might be a bit of a risk doubling up on the defence. I think the attack is probably where the value's at. If you've already got, let's say for example, you've already got Son and Porro, it's a way up and a toss up between Vicario and probably someone like Richarlison. And given the form Richarlison's showing, I'd maybe be tempted by him instead. But if you're sort of looking and sort of cemented yourself into getting one of those Spurs defenders slash goalkeeper, I think Vicario is one of the better ones to own there.
Yeah, and then moving on to the defenders. Then we're starting off with Dan Burn. I don't think we need to touch on him too much. 4.6 million. He's absolutely nailed in Newcastle's injury hit defence at the moment. No sign of anyone returning, barring maybe Kieran Trippier. We don't really know if he's going to be available at the time of recording either. So, what's your thoughts, Ben? Would you still dive into this Newcastle defence if you were looking to bring in like a doubler this week, or would you maybe look elsewhere?
Yeah, I'd be tempted this week. I think Dan Burn's cheap enough for you to be able to sort of take that risk on that. With all of these teams that are doubling, the clean sheets are definitely not guaranteed with any of them. And I think you have to bear that in mind. It's annoying because, Dan Burn is a good cut price option. But if you wanted to go for an attacking defender, you're probably not going to look then at that Newcastle defence just because there's so much uncertainty in those fullback roles. And it's unfortunate because the guys that have been playing, Lewis Hall, Livramento, have looked really decent over the last couple of weeks in terms of attacking potential, particularly Lewis Hall, who I was looking at potentially bringing in. But yeah, Dan Burn's definitely one of my transfer targets. I've got Fabian Schär in my team at the moment, so I'm looking for a replacement, and he is pretty like for like in that regard. So I may just make the move on that.
Yeah, and then a team that Newcastle face this week is Brighton. Obviously, Lewis Dunk is probably like the only nailed option at the moment in their defence, given the injuries that they've sustained. He does come in quite pricey at over 5 million. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? For me, I don't think he's very high up in my list of defenders that I want, but I think you're thinking of bringing him in, right?
Yeah, I am thinking of bringing him in, and again, it's because I've got an injury for a Brighton defender that I was looking to have for my team in Van Heck. Obviously, not ideal at all. The fixtures aren't really that good either, but it's going to be a case of sort of weighing up between the nailedness of Dunk, a little bit of attacking threat in terms of the set pieces, etc., against a Newcastle, Chelsea, and Man United team who, defensively, let's be honest, they've not been that great, or weighing it up and going for the potential upside of someone like a Brighton fullback where you can try and get some attacking potential. Again, their attack hasn't been great in the tail end of the season, so it's sort of like one of those sort of necessary evils to maybe cover yourself with a Brighton defender for the double game week. A lot of managers who are going to be filling out their teams with double game week teams will have triple Man City, will have triple Chelsea, will have triple Spurs, and maybe one or two United. It doesn't leave you much scope to go with any other sort of teams that are doubling other than maybe going for one Brighton player. So, I mean, if they do get a clean sheet out of that, it's fantastic. But if not, like 4 points, not the end of the world, I'd guess.
Yeah, and then moving on to another centre back option, it's going to be Christian Romero. He has the most attacking returns out of all Spurs defenders so far this season. A slight goal threat, although his expected data would definitely not tell you that. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, you mentioned the double up with Spurs defence with Vicario. You weren't too keen. Would Romero's attacking threat maybe change that?
Uh, I'd still be apprehensive to go there. I think if you're weighing up between Pedro Porro and Romero, I don't actually think there's too much in it between those two at the moment. Porro's not performing as well as we thought he would, although you've got to remember his set piece threat and potential with that and him being a fullback. But Romero does pop up and has been unlucky to not return in some fixtures as well in recent game weeks. So yeah, I don't mind it, but again, it's for these double game week defenders. You're not expecting clean sheets. If one of them returns in either game, then you're looking at a decent score there.
Yeah, and then finally, as we mentioned earlier, Kieran Trippier, 6.6 million at the time of recording. There is potential for him to be back for this double game week. He's been out in Dubai, warm weather training with multiple members of staff from Newcastle. Obviously, this one's probably going to have to wait until Friday to get a definitive update. Obviously, Eddie Howe is not necessarily the best source of information either when it comes to updates with how many times he's sort of fooled FPL managers this season. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Because obviously, when he does play, his upside is unbelievable. But do you think it's just too soon to bring him in?
I think it's an unfortunate case. It's slightly too soon. Like I think you probably guarantee that he plays a part in at least one of those games in game week 37, but you leave yourself with a really high risk of coming away with a 1 pointer in a double game week. And I think that risk is just too much to take, especially when you can save yourself a full 2 million and go for someone like Dan Burn, who you know is going to guarantee 4 points at a minimum. And then if there's a clean sheet in one, then that's a bonus. Whereas Trippier, you're almost sort of saying, look, it's one of those cases. It's 1 point or it's a massive haul with Kieran Trippier. You've got to weigh up that risk. It's a massive risk. But I think if you're chasing rank and you seriously need to gain points on everyone else, I think there is potential there. But you just got to sort of hedge your bets on the fact that he's going to start at least one of the two. Okay, so moving on into midfield, and the first guy that we're going to talk about is someone who's been playing fantastically in recent weeks. Maybe a little bit unlucky with some of the returns that he hasn't got in those weeks. And it's Kevin De Bruyne. Two sort of returns in his last 3 game weeks, Forest and Brighton away. He produced a good. He's got a nice double game week fixture coming up. Haaland back in banging form as well. He could be a really fantastic differential in these upcoming 2 game weeks.
Yeah, he's obviously in my team. He's been in there for a couple of weeks now. I thought he's very unlucky not to return against Wolves when they scored 5 goals in that fixture. I just think Man City in general just look unbelievable at the minute. I would not be not tripling up on them this week, that's for sure. I think between anyone, it's either him or it's Gavardio. We didn't mention Gavardio on the defenders, just we spoke about him pretty much for the last 3 weeks straight. But yeah, I think it's that 50-50. Obviously, like Ben mentioned earlier with Trippier, I think if you're chasing rank, De Bruyne is definitely worth going for. I think he's under 10% owned easily at most ranks. So, and obviously budget is not really that hard to come by at the moment. So yeah, for me, a really nice option.
Yeah, and next up, a guy that we did touch on a little bit earlier on in the video. It's Richarlison of Spurs. Now, this is a huge opportunity for managers. Obviously, come off the bench against Liverpool, played about 30 minutes, got a goal and an assist in that time. He looks to be the perfect sort of player to bring in for the double and for 38 as well. 2 out of the 3 are really fantastic green fixtures for Spurs that they've got coming up. Looks to be in decent form up front for Spurs. I mean, if you're looking at a Bruno Fernandes replacement, if of course he is out, then I'd probably look no further than Richarlison, right?
Yeah, I thought when I watched that game at the weekend, he literally changed the game on his own, running in behind. Really nice play from him, and obviously they do face Man City in this double, which I think will suit him more than that Burnley fixture potentially. He's saying that though, when he does play up front, his returns per 90 are really, really good. And I think, yeah, like you mentioned, he's a fantastic differential if you maybe have an injury this week. But even if you have someone who maybe does double this week, like, I don't know, Garnacho, for example, and you want to upgrade or go elsewhere, I'd even recommend doing that, because when he does play the 9 and he has a sustained run in that position, I think he's an unbelievable FPL asset and definitely worth more than the 6.5 million price tag.
Definitely. And moving on to another player who has been sort of proving his price tag a little bit wrong this season. It's Anthony Gordon of Newcastle. Got that return away from home last game week and finally sort of brought the stigma away that he only returns in home games. He's got 2 away games and 1 home game coming up left. I think he's fantastic value at 6.4 million. I think a Newcastle double up in the attack is probably close to essential at this point. They are scoring goals. They are still in the race for Europe as well. Gordon, Josh, I think is a good pick to go for, right?
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's someone who I haven't owned in recent weeks, and he's been killing me every single week. He's so explosive, and he seems to also be so consistent at the same time. So, picking up that assist last week, he gets in the bonus most times as well when he does return, which is really nice to have. And like you mentioned, I think not only is the double up in Newcastle attack nearly essential, it's also needed to sort of gain rank if you do own Newcastle attackers. Having just Isak isn't enough because he is so high owned. So between Gordon and maybe someone like a Callum Wilson, who we'll touch on in a bit, I think you need to have one of those plus an Isak to sort of gain rank, especially in the higher ranks. So yeah, really nice option. And obviously, like you mentioned, returned in the away fixture last week. His next away fixture is Manchester United, which I'd pretty much bet on him returning in that as well at the moment with United's defence.
Okay, yeah, and speaking of Manchester United, Alejandro Garnacho is another player that we've highlighted here. For me, I'm not so keen on him just because of how good the other options have looked over the last couple of weeks. But if you are constrained by your budget and you're looking for a cheap midfield enabler, I think that Garnacho is really good value. It's a differential as well. Man United's fixtures, obviously, a little bit difficult. Arsenal at home, Newcastle at home, Brighton away. But I do think there are 1 or 2 returns in there for Garnacho in that run.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's definitely down to budget if you're bringing in Garnacho. If Bruno Fernandes is out, I'd actually probably sell him, to be honest, because I don't see how they get any sort of attacking returns. We saw against Crystal Palace how poor they were in terms of attacking without Bruno Fernandes, and there was just no creativity. So yeah, Garnacho for me, probably like a 6 out of 10 option. And like I mentioned, if Bruno is out, I think I'd transfer him out for one of these other options like Richarlison.
Yeah, and finally, if you've got 0.3 million more in budget and you only have 2 out of the 3 Chelsea slots, I would definitely look at Noni Madueke for this game week. He has looked so good in recent game weeks. 2 double-digit hauls in the last 3 game weeks. Forest and Brighton away, followed by Bournemouth at home. So 3 fairly decent fixtures as well. Absolutely nailed in that team, looking really creative alongside Nicholas Jackson. Josh, I mean, there's a really a case to say you could go over triple up of like Palmer, Madueke, and Jackson for this game and really attack that double game week and try and sort of get as many points as possible because Chelsea are actually looking decent now going forwards.
Yeah, I think all season, to be fair, they've been better at going forwards than they have defensively for sure. It's just a case of not being able to pick those nailed attackers because there haven't been any other than Cole Palmer. Now in recent weeks, Noni Madueke, Jackson, these guys are coming into form and being nailed at the same time, which is perfect. And like you mentioned, I'd even consider maybe taking a hit to take Gusto out because obviously he's maybe not necessarily going to play both games, and then bringing in one of their attackers if you don't own them already. I think, yeah, really, really nice option. And again, a huge differential if you're looking at gaining ranks. He won't be anywhere near 5% owned this week. Okay, then, so moving on to the forwards, and there is always limited supply at the moment with these double of forwards. I think one of the main men that you need to probably have, if you don't have already, or at least need to consider, is Nicholas Jackson. Obviously, coming off that mega haul at the weekend was huge for him. He seems to be taking his chances, and one thing that he has done all season as well is create chances, and that's one big thing with him. He's not necessarily just a goal scorer; he gets involved in the build-up as well. So yeah, really nice option, and to be honest, he is, in my opinion, the third best forward after Isak and Haaland. I don't think anyone else really gets close to him, although we will discuss the other options. I think if you need a forward and have that Chelsea spot, he's the one, right, Ben?
Yeah, you got to like he's looking fantastic at the moment with a double game week as well. Like I don't think you can look anywhere else really in terms of a third striker. Like obviously we're going to talk about sort of these other options. They're going to be seriously differential compared to what Jackson is going to be this game week. I think he's going to have a really high ownership. I think that front three of Haaland, Isak and Jackson are going to be really high owned. I don't think any of them are going to drop below 75% EO. At a minimum there. So yeah, Nicholas Jackson definitely one to look out for. He's looking good, looking in form against a couple of teams that, defensively won't be too good, and Jackson could take full advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. And then next up is Rasmus Højlund, who I have in my team at the moment, and it's just absolutely painstakingly having him in my team. It's just not been great, not getting any service whatsoever, which is the main frustration, because I think we all know that he can take chances, and he's proven this season that he can take chances when he gets them, but he's just not getting any service. United as well just don't look great at the moment. I think they're just lacking a lot of players and just anything good. So yeah, I'd probably avoid Højlund, to be honest, if you're looking at bringing in a striker. As we mentioned, Jackson's definitely a better option. I think he's either cheaper or just a little bit more than Højlund. What's your thoughts on Højlund, Ben? Would you be extreme avoid on this one?
If Bruno Fernandes is out, yes, extreme avoid. Just due to the fact that he is their only real creator in the team and creative output. And Bruno's been so consistent. And even when he is in the team creating the amount of chances he does, not all of them go to Højlund anyway. So, yeah, it's a painstaking one for owners because you're probably going to have to keep him just due to sort of everything else that's going on. There's a few injuries sort of in the FPL, sort of relevant players. But, yeah, if I'm looking to transfer him up, I probably wouldn't at this point. Like it's not looking too great from an attacking perspective for United.
Yeah, and then someone else who obviously doubles in Gameweek 37. This is good for those who may be struggling on budget, maybe wanting to get someone like a Trippier or something like that in their team. Is João Pedro. Obviously, he scored the rebound after his missed penalty at the weekend and still managed to somehow get into the bonus, which is absolutely mental. I think that goes to show how bad everyone else was probably in that game. So yeah, a nice option if you need someone who's cheap. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, decent option. The fixtures aren't too bad, but Brighton's attack hasn't been good in recent weeks, which is the sort of downside and upside of both there for João Pedro. Again, if you can really constrain for budget, I probably would go for him as sort of the budget enabler forward if that is where my team structure lended me to. But obviously, if you are constrained by budget, it's probably likely that you have someone like Salah in your team anyway. So I'd be tempted maybe to transfer him out instead of maybe going for an enabler up front like Pedro.
Yeah, and then our final option, a huge differential. Callum Wilson, as I mentioned earlier, obviously he did start up front with Isak against Burnley at the weekend. Isak missed a penalty, and Wilson was on penalties before Isak took them over. So there is potential there that you could be getting Newcastle's next penalty taker if he's on the pitch. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he worth maybe, say, I don't know, you have that third striker spot, you're chasing rank, you don't have Gordon. Is it worth going Isak and Wilson? Or are you just not really fond of him?
I would be tempted if it wasn't that the template was already so set with Haaland, Isak, and Jackson. I think what would be the case is if you've got maybe a triple Chelsea without Jackson and you've gone Madueke instead, then I think Wilson's really good. So if you are chasing rank, I think a triple up in a Chelsea of like Madueke, Palmer, and like a Petrovic or someone like that, alongside like a Wilson up top would be probably the play if you're going differential. If you're going template, you'd switch it the other way and go Gordon and Jackson instead. So it really depends how you want to play this end of the season on the transfer choices that you make, because there are some outstanding differentials like Wilson and Madueke, But if you're wanting to keep it solid and secure, then Jackson and Gordon are probably the ones to go for.
Okay, then, so that wraps up our Game Week 37 transfer targets, the penultimate transfer targets of the season. Only 2 game weeks to go. Let us know your rank at the moment in the comments and where you want to end up come the end of Game Week 38.
And as usual, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
You may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.